It's a great pleasure to welcome each of you to this Ifcba event, and you'll be able to probably watch the Canadian sunrise behind me as we work through our agenda this morning. We know that customs brokers are always hungry for knowledge, and we know how much you all love the harmonized system. We also know that 2022 is fast approaching. So it seemed like a great idea to ask an HS expert from the World Customs Organization to open this meeting with a presentation on the HS tariff 2022 and 2027. Let me introduce you to Leo Callaghan. First, Leo is a fellow Canadian. That's entirely coincidental. And he's had a distinguished career in both the Canadian government and at the WCO, focused on matters related to the tariff. His first love seemed to be Chapter 84, then he added Chapters 85 and 90, and now he's the WCO expert working on Chapters 85 to 90. Leo just told me he'll be leaving the WCO and returning to Canada shortly. That's bad news for the WCO, but it's good news for us because we know we'll keep in close touch with him. Please join me in welcoming Leo Callaghan to talk to us this morning about the HS tariff and particularly the HS tariff 2022. So over to you, Leo.
Thank you, Carol. We need to, I'll share the screen. Okay, now I'm ready to go. So this presentation is based on the recommendation that we made in June of 2019 for the HS 2022 nomenclature. I'm going to speak about the general scope of the amendments, the quantitative analysis. I'll give you a bunch of data and then typical examples of the amendments. So this is the recommendation. It's the 10th recommendation, but it's only the 6th to make major amendments to the HS. As you can see from the screen, there are 351 amendments for this particular HS 2022 amendment. Here by chapter, you can see the types of amendments or the numbers of amendments in each chapter. And I will give Carol a copy. Well, Carol has a copy of this presentation, and after this meeting, she can send you a copy of this presentation. So the HS implemented in 1998, and you can see that the various amendments in the review cycle. As I said, 2022, 351 sets of amendments. You can also see that the numbers of headings is relatively stable. What we try to do in each amendment cycle is look at the subheadings and headings depending on the volume of trade. So 100 million US for a heading, 50 million US for a subheading, and determine whether, if it's below the threshold, whether it should be retained or not. And there are various reasons why headings and subheadings are retained even though they're above or even though they're below the threshold. So for 2022, you can see that we had 8 new headings: fish meal and flowers, novel tobacco, mixtures of hydrofluoride carbons, 3D printers, flat panel displays, e-waste and scrap, drones, and parts of aircrafts. And we deleted 2 headings because they were below the 2 headings, but one cadmium was below the threshold, and was determined that we should delete it because there's no administration that asked, or no international organization that asked to retain it. And the parts of aircrafts was deleted because we had to include parts for drones, so we had to change the scope of that particular heading. So we got new heading 8807. Typical examples of the amendments in the public health and safety area, we have a single heading for all types of diagnostic test kits. So for Zika virus and the like, we have clinical test kits for medical research. We have cell cultures, including cell therapy products. For protection of society in the fight against terrorism, we looked at the dual-use goods, received some information from some international organizations who wanted to track these products. So they included radioactive materials and toxins, biological safety cabinets. These products were classified by the committee before they were included. There were some differing viewpoints as to where these biological safety cabinets should go. We have high-speed cameras, etc. We also had electronic detonators, igniters, and synthetic diamonds were added to the nomenclature. Goods specially controlled under various conventions. We have chemical weapons, Rotterdam and Stockholm conventions, so subheadings were created for certain products. For the International Narcotics Control Board, we had fentanyls and the derivatives and precursors, because as you know, fentanyls has been in the news for the last number of years as being an issue, and we need to track those products. Then we have under the Kigali Amendment of the Montreal Protocol, we have certain products that were given subheadings under the global warming gases. Food security and environment protection. The Food and Agricultural Organization of the United Nations proposed a number of amendments, including edible insects, mushrooms, pine nuts, and African cherry for subheadings, as well as wood and forestry products, teak, LVL, lamb board, construction products, seats, etc. Technological progress. We had a proposal to put in subheadings for microbial fats and oils, glass fibers, metal forming machines, 3D printers, received their own heading, LED light sources, and smartphones. Smartphones have been around a long time, and it was finally determined that they have enough trade and they should have their own subheading. Trade patterns. We have low trade volume. So cameras for roll film of a width of 35 millimeters, cadmium, as I previously mentioned, and springs, clocks, and watch parts. These subheadings for these were deleted. Then the clarification of the classification. Sometimes having a clarification in the explanatory notes is not sufficient, because majority of countries, while they take note of the explanatory notes, they're not legal, and sometimes the courts don't give them enough, I would say, recognition. So the only way to ensure that we have uniform classification is to make legal changes. So in this regard, we had fish meals and powders, yogurt, medical rubber gloves, flat panel displays, and vehicle windows. So I was asked to give a timeline for harmonized system for HS 2027. Now, normally speaking, the subcommittee should have looked at the new proposals or existing proposals that weren't finished from the HS 2022 review cycle. So this work would begin November of 2020. And in fact, it did begin, and the subcommittee had made a good progress regarding the proposals that were before it. Now, some of those proposals were sent. In fact, it said November 2020. In fact, the subcommittee met in January/February of this year, and the scientific subcommittee met in November of last year because of scheduling between the ending of the HSC and the beginning of the RSC. There wasn't enough time to do the work necessary to have the meeting. Now, some of the amendments proposed that were accepted by the subcommittee were sent to the HSC in March on a flow basis. So we try to send them on a flow basis, and I'll tell you what happens at the end. They're usually they are approved in the final HS meeting before the amendment package. The recommendation is sent to the WCO Council for approval. So in this particular one for HS 2027, the last meeting is March 2024. And the amendment package is sent to the Council for adoption in June 2024. Now, in November of 2023, this is the last meeting of the review subcommittee before, and it has to complete its work to send its work then to the HSC for approval in March 2024. Now, in March 2024, the HS committee provisionally approves the last amendments. It then groups all the amendments that have previously been approved, as well as the ones received in March that are approved, into one package, and we call that the amendment package. Then the committee approves that package at the March 2024 meeting, and it is that package which is sent to the WCO Council for adoption in June 2024. Now, I put here June 28, 2024, the Council adopts the recommendation package. Normally speaking, the Council approves a recommendation on the Friday before the Saturday, which is the end of the Council session. So this timing is dependent on how the Council is doing its business in any particular Council session. Now, I've had a question mark here for July 2024 because it's not certain when the Secretary General is going to send out to contracting parties the list of amendments contained in the recommendation. Now, so it's up to the Secretary. We try to get that particular notification out as soon as possible, and certainly before the end of the first week after the Council session closes on the Saturday. Now, this notification is very important because it triggers the objection period. Now, an objection is that a contracting party may not support a particular amendment in the recommendation, and that particular contracting party probably has expressed its views all along during the recommendation process. But if the contracting party really cannot support the amendment, they can put in an objection. They do not have to justify the objection. All they have to say is write to the Secretary General and say that we do not like subheading XYZ to be included in the amendment package, and then it has to be taken out. An objection is different than when you have a reservation in the HS committee on a classification of a particular product. When that happens, then the contracting party, and it's within the rules, they notify the Secretariat that and Secretary General that they are putting a reservation against a particular HS decision, but then they have to then submit a document within 1 month to say these are the reasons why they object or they do not support the classification. Now, if during the objection period an objection is put in, as I mentioned, that objection is that the recommendation is taken out and the rest of the recommendation is deemed to have been adopted. So for this particular review cycle, sometime in July, say July 7th, the committee or the council adopts the recommendation, and then in January of 2025, the objection period ends. So, for example, if you put in an objection on the 4th of if the Secretary General notifies the contracting parties on 4 July, then the objection period ends at Brussels times midnight on 3rd of January 2025. So from January 2025 to December 2026, the contracting parties have to get the amendments ready to go into their computer systems for 1 January 2027. They also will send the amendments to their parliaments for approval if that is required. And I'm sure that businesses as well will have to get their systems ready to go also. Also during this time, the HS committee and the secretary work to make consequential amendments to the necessary WCO publications to reflect the legal changes which have been adopted. So during this time, we look at the explanatory notes and we make consequential amendments because the explanatory notes are the interpretation of the HS nomenclature. And we also have to make amendments to the compendium of classification opinions because sometimes heading or subheadings change, and so a committee decision would have to change. This particular thing happens from time to time in every amendment. Now, once all that is done, then on January 1, 2027, the legal amendments go into effect. Now, as regards HS 2027, the review subcommittee has received a fair number of proposals for amendments for 2027. There has not been what I would call a major amendment, and a major amendment in the sense that like when we did the amendments back in 2007 for the high-tech area, that was a concentration of amendments in one particular area. That hasn't happened this particular time as of this moment, but at one of the committees, a contracting party mentioned the fact that we should be looking, and a proposal could be submitted to lead to a better visibility and traceability of environmental friendly or harmful products. So if that proposal comes in, then there could be a number of different headings and subheadings that would be affected, that would be put into the HS 2027 amendment process. But hopefully, if that occurs, that it occurs sooner than later, because as you saw, November of 2023 is only 2 years away, and that's the time when the review subcommittee must wrap up all its work in order to send their work to the HS committee in March of 2024. So if we get that particular amendment, I think that's going to be a lot of work. Now, other amendments that we're looking at is in respect of food supplements. I think that this one will take a lot of work because food supplements are a contentious issue as regards classification. They get before the HS committee fairly frequently. We also have an amendment in 7318 in respect of fasteners, so zippers. Possible amendment to heading 8513 to provide for solar energy portable lamps. We have a possible amendment to the legal text of heading 7004 to clarify the classification of overflow fusion glass. This particular product was a subject of a number of HS committee examinations. We have possible amendment to the nomenclature in respect of Ruabos tea. Possible amendment to heading 7318 in respect of self-tapping and self-drilling screws. We also have an amendment proposal for fat trimmings. Fat trimmings was a source of many committees examining the classification of fat trimmings, and it's a difficult issue because each shipment would be different. So I wish them well in coming up with a good legal amendment that's workable. We have a possible amendment to the nomenclature in respect of flowers and meals of insects unfit for human consumption. Another amendment deals with waste oils containing polychlorinated biphenyls at a specific concentration level. We have an amendment currently in respect of the text of heading 0704. We have a possible amendment to heading 7108 to distinguish between different categories of gold and unwrought forms. Possible amendment to the heading text of headings 3003 and 3004 and creation of new headings and subheadings to provide specifically for certain medicaments during the 2027 review cycle. Medicaments, I don't need to tell you that that is always a constant source of discussion and disagreement. The committee has looked at different medicaments frequently. We also have a possible amendment to provide specifically for fresh, frozen, and dry blueberries during the 2020 review cycle. I think this one has to do with accumulation of statistics. I don't know that it's a classification issue. We have a possible amendment to heading 8703, possible amendment to headings 0306, 0307, and 0308. In addition, we have an amendment to align the French text to the English in relation to bars and rods, hot rolled and irregular wound coils. Sometimes the committee makes explanatory notes or legal amendments, and the English and French aren't aligned, and they have to be aligned. And it's a particular problem if the texts aren't aligned, especially if your country has official languages in English and French, like Canada, for instance. We have an amendment that leads, and then finally is that last amendment I spoke previously about leading to better visibility and traceability of environmentally friendly or harmful products. So I think that that is my presentation as far as what happened in HS22, what we're looking for in HS2027, and the review process. So now I'll hand the floor back.
Gosh, thank you so much, Leo. It's always amazing to me how much work the WCO does in advance of implementation of these proposals. And some of the challenges that national governments have and our members have in terms of the actual implementation strategies. So I think we're bit pressed for time. I didn't see any messages or questions in the chat, but what I would do is invite people, if they have any questions, to maybe submit them in writing, and we'll pass them along to you, Leo, and maybe that will be the best way to handle them. They are complex, and I'm always struck by the complexity of the harmonized system. And again, there's very few groups you could speak to in the world who would understand what you just said. And and one of those groups is certainly customs brokers. So thank you so much for your time. And again, we'll look forward to being in touch when you're back in Canada, and wish you the very best. Thanks, Leo.
Thank you, Carol, and I wish you a productive day today in your meeting.
Great. Thanks.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.